One of the things that have been constantly spoken of and supposedly was found, missiles and so forth, actually put into like hospitals or into schools to sort of almost provoke a bombing into that area to wipe out things, almost to use as propaganda. Now that sounds horrific to me, but
I mean,
they said they found that, and as a UN, have you seen that to be true?
By taking the negotiations away with the BDS movement, which is what they want to do, they want to have Israel up against a wall. By taking the negotiations away, you are allowing a state to prosper under undemocratic values and possible terror regimes, which is what is being created a lot today.
If the Arabs were in the same place as Israel, if they had the weapons that Israel have, do you think they'll let the Jews live and have voting rights in heaven? They would have erased it from the face of the earth.
Name a single country in the history of the world faced with threats comparable to those faced by Israel that has ever had a better record of human rights, a higher compliance with the rule of law, and more concern to protect the lives of civilians. You cannot name a single country because there is none.
If you don't hate evil, you don't love God. That's what, that is correct. So if you're not fighting for Christians in the Middle East, and you're not fighting for Israel, I don't know how much you love God. I know how much you love yourself.
So now Christians are boycotting Israel? I wasn't expecting that. I mean, all my life, I always thought Christians were supposed to back Israel and love the Jews. Yeah, maybe I was going to the wrong church. I've noticed that most of the world pretty much hates Israel. Maybe the big problem with our planet is Israel.
Any comments on Israel?
Tell them to get the hell out of Palestine.
Ooh.
These people are occupied.
We could not, in good conscience, stand in the way of a resolution at the United Nations.
We need to separate ourselves from Israel. It's a cancer on American foreign policy.
We believe that Israel is an apartheid state.
The American Studies Association voted to endorse a boycott of Israel's academic
territories, Palestinian land, that there is a horrendous example of apartheid.
But hey, what do I know? I'm not a Middle East expert. The thing is, though, I built my career getting to the truth.
All I'm asking liberals to do is be liberal enough to let me have my point of view, because that's
we have gotten too politically correct in this country.
But if you are offended by the truth, that's your problem.
Exposing hypocrisy and lies is, I guess, my thing. So, maybe it's time I find out for myself.
Here's boycott Israel if you think that's just, but unless you have a double standard, you must also boycott the rest of the nations where allegations of human rights violations.
So, my journey begins. A journey to discover the truth. I gotta be honest, I really don't know a lot about Israel, but yet I have a connection to that based on my faith that I feel I have a biblical obligation to understand, even an obligation to defend it. Then I realized, well, if I want to be a truth teller, I have to be willing to examine this and see, where did I get this idea? Is this something that someone taught me, or does this have biblical clarity? Anyway, I'm going to need you, the viewer, to trust me just for a moment, because I have no agenda. I'm a truth seeker, no matter where that leads, because remember, the moment I can say there is no truth, I can control you. I can create a fantasy world and demand that you live in it.
Resistance is useless. I think it's the most evil country in the world, hated by everybody. They are occupiers, apartheiders. They are colonizer. They are worse than Iran and China and Syria and Rwanda combined, and worse than that, they have nukes. Of course, I'm speaking of Apparently we have a UN contingency here with us tonight. UN contingency. And by the way, love you UN folks. I love how you police the world, nanny the world, make us all better people. Can you do me a favor? Pay your parking tickets.
Smell it, now take it. Wrong. That's for you.
Everything apparently Israel does is wrong. They can't even make baseball hats right. They make the hat and they forgot to add the brim. That's why their men wear them 24 hours a day. They can't figure out how to take them off. What's going on? What's happening? What is it about Israel that everybody hates? Could it be maybe because they're the chosen people? Maybe it's that. They're the chosen people. We're the chosen people. God loves us the best. Does he? He gave you a strip of land in the desert. If he loved you, why didn't he give you Hawaii? Is it the Jesus thing?
I'm Jewish. Now, a Jew, dictionary style, is one who is descended from one of the ancient tribes of Judea, or one who is regarded to have descended from that tribe. But you and I know what a Jew really is. One who killed our Lord. And although there should be a statute of limitations to the crime, we're still paying the dues. You blame it on Roman soldiers. All right, I'm going to clear the air once and for all and confess. We did it, my family, I did it. We found a note in the basement that said, "We killed him, signed Morty."
Maybe it was that first Jewish comic who apparently bombed. What else is it about Israel that everybody hates? Maybe it's because they came up with all those rules that they wanted to impose on the rest of us. All those laws. No, they weren't even that. They were 10 commandments.
The Lord Jehovah has given unto you these 10 commandments.
You begin to hear little things that I've heard throughout my life and throughout history. Always had something to do with Jews. And sort of some sense that they didn't like these people because they were Jews. What have these people done? Here's what I heard. Jews rule the world. What? Do you know how many people are in the world? 7 billion. Do you know how many Jews would have to be around to rule the world? What, 1 billion? 2 billion? Yeah. You know how many Jews there are? 14 million. 7 billion people. 14 million Jews. They rule the world. Those Jews know how to turn a profit, don't they? They're good.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
You know, everybody has a point of view. I want to find the truth and let people decide. So I decided, hey, I'm stupid. I'm going to have to go find experts, lots smarter than me, and see what they have to say. I'm talking about real people, students, Jewish people, Israeli people, Palestinian people, Christian people, soldier people, Jewish comic people.
You know, it's funny. President Clinton once said, you know, when they talk about the Jewish presence in the Middle East and Israel, Yasser Arafat was saying, you know, there was no Jewish presence here. And Clinton said, Jesus? Wasn't he here?
Even a Jewish rabbi comic. Jewish rabbi? Okay, that's redundant, sorry. Nevertheless, I got to travel. My journey took me to LA, New York, DC, and finally, Israel.
Where are you from?
Iran.
Iran?
Iran.
All right, good for
Shah,
you.
Shah.
Yeah? Oh, yeah, okay. You're the Shah. I wondered what happened to you. Thank you so much. He ended up here.
Thank you.
And I do have to ask myself, after all these facts have been compiled, I gotta ask myself, and so should you, why should we care about Israel? I mean, it's not affecting me, right?
You have to care about Israel, because if you don't care about Israel, what's happening in Israel is coming to a theater near you.
So, to get to the truth, we're gonna need to go back, way back.
So your people, Palestinians, have been here how many?
We've been here from the time of Adam and Eve.
What is Israel? Who are the Jews? Who are the Palestinians? What is Palestine? So, around 3,000 years ago, a nice little place called Israel. What gives them the right to try that again? Anyway, the Romans came in, threw some toga parties, and renamed the place.
The Romans were so fed up with the manpower and material losses the Jewish people had caused them, they decided to basically get rid of the Jewish people. So they renamed the country from Judea, they said, let's give it a non-Jewish name, to Philistia, named after the extinct Philistines. But it's amazing because their agenda was to do exactly what is going on today.
The new version of Israel was set up in 1948, which made a lot of people very unhappy.
So the UN partition was very friendly to the Palestinian people, offering them equal treatment, equal land, political rights that actually would have maybe helped them to form a state.
Well, the amazing thing is every nation is allowed its country except the Jews. Jews lived in Jewland, called Israel, 3,000 years ago.
Oh, so we are the bad ones. I'd love to sit and discuss this with you, but I'm short on time. Yeah! We settled here for hundreds of years! Good point. None of my ancestors ever stepped foot in this land. No, you're right.
Israel faced 4 major wars that they had no chance to win and multiple terrorist attacks, and the Jews haven't budged. In fact, they keep winning more land somehow.
We ask why Israel wins all the time, because they've won every war they have to. If they hadn't won every war, they wouldn't exist. I mean, you can't go 8-1 and be Israel.
As a byproduct of a war we didn't start called the 1948 war, there was a line drawn called the Green Line. And 2 countries that had no right to be in here seized pieces of territory. Egypt seized the Gaza Strip, and Jordan seized what everyone calls the West Bank. And people don't get this either, that Israel is 20% Arabs. Everyone thinks the Arabs are all living behind barbed wire and fences. But Israel itself, within the internationally recognized boundaries of Israel, is an Arab population, Israeli Arabs. People are shocked to hear that. And they're Israeli citizens. They have the same identity card that I have. They have the same rights. They vote. Are there issues, social issues, minority issues? Yeah, but it's not apartheid.
Shut up, you! Miserable bloody Romans, no sense of humor.
As we discovered, the Romans hated the rebellious Jews. I mean, I guess those pesky Jews didn't enjoy whippings, floggings, and crucifixions, even though they were free.
Shut up, you Jewish turd! Who are you calling Jewish? I'm not Jewish. I'm a Samaritan.
Thus, they got so ticked off that they renamed the place Palestine. Now, this included Israel, Judea, and Samaria, basically anywhere a Jew lived. Then, in 70 AD, they said, enough is enough, and kicked out any and every Jew they could find.
Money pulling your leg? It's a joke.
So now, just who exactly are the Palestinians?
Were they called Palestinians then? I don't even know what they were called.
We are all, well, the Canaanites. This is the land of Canaan, and Canaan is an Arabic word,
Palestine, is Palestine an Arabic word? I don't know the difference.
Well, Palestine it's thousands of years old, you know.
Always one, isn't there? Now, where were we?
After the Romans renamed the place Palestine, everyone's driver's license said Palestinian, right? I mean, the Jews, the Arabs, the Democrats, everyone.
That's the fact, Jack! That's a fact, Jack!
Actually, for the next 1,500 years or so, it was the Jews, not the Arabs, who were called Palestinians.
The Palestine Liberation Organization was created in 1964, Ahmed Sukkari. And the goal was to reorient the conflict and change history, to win the hearts and minds of the West and remove the support from Israel. We have to reorient the conflict from mighty Arab world to little Israel, to mighty Israel, to the small, persecuted Arab people. But we can't call them Arab people because so they invented this term.
Now, here's the strange part. Jews who had lived there since birth suddenly were no longer Palestinians. Only the Arabs were.
But what's in a name, right? Did you know that there have been more United Nations resolutions condemning Israel than every other nation on the earth combined? What?
I'm afraid they'll find our humor very, very dry.
So I went to meet with some important UN people.
What do you got?
It is as if they enter the Twilight Zone. It is as if their mind is kidnapped by an alternate reality.
There is a 5th dimension, beyond that which is known to man.
I mean, first of all, the UN as an organization in general does a lot of good work in the world. When we're dealing with the General Assembly, for instance, it's basically become the thrashing ground for Israel.
I think that the UN became one of the biggest corrupt organizations around the world.
Let's go back to one particular year in history, 1975. In that year, millions of Cambodians were being murdered by Pol Pot. It was one of the worst genocides since the end of the Second World War. Not a single resolution condemning Pol Pot or the Cambodian genocide, and the UN spent its year having a resolution comparing Israel and Zionism to racism. It's a knee-jerk annual parade of hate directed against the nation state of the Jewish people and only the nation state of the Jewish people.
The UN Human Rights Council gets together and immediately at every session always begins by condemning Israel, automatically. So the UN is not an objective player in the Middle East at all.
But if you really care about human rights, look at Syria. What are you obsessing with us for? There's hundreds of thousands of people being killed there, and you're silent.
I challenge any of your viewers to name a single country in the history of the world faced with threats comparable to those faced by Israel that has ever had a better record of human rights, a higher compliance with the rule of law, and more concern to protect the lives of civilians. You cannot name a single country because there is none.
The rumors of invading armies and mass destruction are based on hysteria and are absolutely false.
Much of the world has signed on to say and agree that Israel has breached international law as far as an occupying nation, so on and so forth. So, if Israel has in fact broken an international law, well, let's sue them. That's the American way, right? Huh?
The whole Palestinian case is a monster lie. There isn't an inch of Israel on Arab land. It was all controlled, owned, lock, stock, and barrel by the Turks, who aren't Arabs, for 400 years. And they lost the First World War. 5 countries were created out of the ruins of the Turkish Empire: Iraq, Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, and Israel. You know, nobody's accusing the Syrians or the Lebanese or the Jordanians of stealing the land, only the Jews.
Israel's occupation is completely lawful. Any country is entitled to occupy an enemy country that is using its boundaries to attack.
Well, there's a military presence in the West Bank that ensures security and that ensures that buses don't begin blowing up again in Jerusalem and in Tel Aviv, which was a reality not that many years ago. Not that many years ago, you couldn't go into a cafe in Israel without first calling your mom to make sure that you told her you loved her.
Wow. Israel calls their army what it is. The IDF is the Israeli Defense Force. They don't exist as a war-making engine. They exist as to defend the boundaries that were given us by the United Nations, and reduced boundaries from what the League of Nations had given 25 years before.
To argue that the settlements or the occupation caused terrorism is to get the facts backwards. It's terrorism that causes the continuation of the occupation.
Israel's not a perfect place. They make mistakes every second of every day, as every country, every person does. The morals of Israel, I think, transcend any mistakes they make because they're in the right, from my perspective, on all those things.
Where's the beef? And if you're going to be an occupier, hey, you might as well throw in a little apartheid. It's part of the fun of being an occupier. You get you apartheid people.
Do you understand?
Apartheid went from the womb till the tomb, couldn't even take a dump in the same bathroom. People say Israel's an apartheid state, but I can't relate to that baseless hate. It's not really fair to try and compare a racist regime with the war on terror. Using common sense against violence, Israel had to build up the border fence. And if you think that's apartheid, it's because you don't know what apartheid really was.
And here's what I found interesting. 1999, Miss Israel was an Arab. Wow. And then they put one of the Arabs on their Supreme Court. And 76 of them are in Congress. What I'm getting at is apparently when it comes to apartheid, Israel sucks. For people that rule the world, you'd think they'd do a better apartheid, don't you think? All they do is just use their thuggery against people. And when I think thug, I think rabbi.
It's always amazed me that among all the nations in the world, the one that gets compared to the Nazis the most in the world press is actually Israel.
You know why? Why do people resort to this lie? Number one, European guilt. They did nothing to help the Jews during the Nazi Holocaust. And by comparing Israel to the Nazis, they absolve themselves and they say, you see, the Jews are just as bad. We're not.
There's only one state in the Middle East which is a real democracy and where hundreds of thousands of Arabs go to the polls, vote for real representatives in a real legislature, worship the way they want, whatever part of Islam they come from, can operate newspapers freely, utilize freedom of speech, and that country is Israel. They are the envy, privately, they are told, the envy of most other Arabs in the Middle East who live under terrible governments.
No, I don't believe that Israel is an apartheid. I was in South Africa for 5 times, and I went to the Museum of the Apartheid in Johannesburg, and what I saw there never ever been appeared between the Israelis and the Palestinians. We have a full cooperation. If you will go to the hospitals, you will find an Arab doctors. If you will go to the universities, you will find an Arab academics. If you will go to the ministries in Israel, you will find Arab people who are working there. And no doubt that by considering Israel as an apartheid, this is another way how to increase the anti-Semitism around the world.
As a member of the South African Parliament, and in the name of millions of my fellow black citizens of that country, we know what apartheid really was. And I therefore ask those in the United States, Europe, and anywhere else in the world who charge Israel with practicing apartheid to please stop doing so. You are damaging the truth. You are damaging any chance for peace in the Middle East. And most of all, you are destroying the memory of the real apartheid.
There is absolutely no analogy between Israel and apartheid South Africa. In apartheid South Africa, a small number of whites dominated the country. Blacks couldn't vote, had no access to the judiciary, were selectively executed. Whereas in Israel, Arabs vote, they serve on the Supreme Court, they serve on universities. Yes, there is an occupation, a military occupation. And if you want to see what it looks like to end the occupation, look at Gaza. And Gaza, the occupation ends, and thousands of rockets and terror tunnels are built from Gaza to kill Israelis. International law does not require a country to commit suicide. It doesn't require a country to give up an occupation as long as there is a belligerency.
If this was an apartheid state, the Arabs would not be allowed to be educated beyond grade 6, where they could only serve the interests of the Jews, because that's what happened in apartheid South Africa. Education was denied black people. The Arab people would not live in wonderful homes in big communities. They would live in ghettos, like black South Africans did. They would be exploited to the hilt, working like slaves and earning nothing. They would not be allowed to sit on benches adjacent to Jews, let alone travel in the same public transport. At every level, the apartheid analogy is ridiculous, to be quite frank, but it works.
This is an apartheid-like. There's no like toilets like in Jim Crow South, whites only, Jews, Arab, that kind of stuff. No, you don't have that. It doesn't exist. I'm not saying it's a perfect system. I'd be lying if I said.
But at least it's being honest. I mean, that's what we're trying. Right. I don't know if you're aware of this, but Israel is an apartheid state.
A what?
Apartheid state.
What does that mean?
You don't know what that means?
No, I don't know what that means.
It just means that they don't allow Palestinians to eat yogurt unaccompanied.
But my family, there was a long journey from Ethiopia to Israel. Yes. There was in Sudan, yes, in a Muslimic place. They sacrificed a lot in their life to came to Israel.
To come here, yes.
Yeah.
Well, so you then can vouch for the fact that there is no apartheid. That is something that has been said but isn't true.
No,
it's maybe more of a disparaging term used against you, but is not true.
There are not apartheid in Israel.
Nothing.
No, definitely.
As priest, as spiritual leader from here, who was born in Nazareth and grew up in Nazareth, and I living now with the Muslims and with the Arabs, I know the truth. Israel, it's not apartheid state. I want all the world to come to visit Israel and to see who we living in Israel. In another country in the Middle East, especially Arabs, Islamic countries, I can't go with the cross and with this
Why?
Yes.
Why?
Why? Because they don't have democracy, they don't have freedom, because they don't have equality. And in Gaza, I don't care to go with this. No. But in Israel, I can to go in Tel Aviv and in Haifa and all the cities.
Want to know your proof that it's not an apartheid state?
Please.
Okay, you want to know the proof? It's the elections. Because there's an Arab party. Okay, there's a party just for Arabs. And that party finished third this year in the elections because they have equal vote, right? And they could have won the election. Anybody who still believes in apartheid, they're only saying it because they hate Jews. And they will keep...
This is anti-Semitic.
This is complete anti-Semitism.
I have to be fair. If the Arabs were in the same place as Israel, if they had the weapons that Israel have, do you think they'll let the Jews live and have voting rights and have it? They would have erased them from the face of the earth. So you got to give credit. Is it apartheid? No, it's not. It's not. There's a little discrimination between, you know what, an Israeli citizen who's Jewish and an Arab? Yeah, but I mean, that comes with the territory, with the situation. Like, I personally would rather live under an Israeli government than live under a Muslim government.
And there was a real truth there, security lines, and things called checkpoints, where they got to go through security lines. Long lines, that's it. That should be if you got to wait in line. To go into a really great country, have to take your shoes off. Oh, that's going too far. You get asked nasty questions like, did you pack this bomb bag yourself?
It's not an apartheid state. Yes, you have separated territories. You have now a wall separating, in Gaza, in the West Bank. But the purpose of this wall wasn't to separate out people based on human rights. It was to stop suicide bombers from coming through. And it pretty much made the number of people who can carry out these large operations, it diminished them. It really reduced them.
They are definitely being kept behind a security barrier which was constructed during the Second Intifada. The first Intifada was in 1987. The second one started in the year 2000, where it was just suicide bombings everywhere. I personally know 6 people who were killed in suicide bombings in between 2000 and 2003. That's a lot of people. You go ask Americans, you know anyone killed in a terrorist attack? No way. So does it inconvenience the Palestinians? Absolutely. By the way, you always see the pictures of the 40-foot-high concrete wall. That's 3% of the security barrier. Fact, 97%, and it's not even built around everywhere yet. It still isn't completed. 97% of it is a chain-link 10-foot-high fence with electronic sensors designed to light up if someone cuts or crosses it to keep infiltrations out. Every country's first priority is the security and safety of its citizens. So if it's a question of inconveniencing our Palestinian neighbors versus having my children be blown up on a bus, what person in their right mind would say no barrier?
The wall wasn't placed there to target Christians. Wall wasn't placed there to target even Arab general population of the Muslim community, especially the secular Muslims. Most of the Jewish people, every single Jewish person that I met actually opposes the wall and is heartbroken by the wall.
Despite the oppression and apartheid, many Palestinians have achieved a living status greater than many in the world. Seems to me if there was such great oppression and apartheid that there would be no success or riches or ability for Palestinians to move up. But yet, that's not what I found.
My house is right over there.
Mm-hmm. And the best example is the house on the top of the hill.
Okay, that's a house?
That's a house. That is Al-Masri. He's the billionaire Palestinian. He made his money in oil.
If this is what oppression gets you, I'm thinking maybe I'd rather join.
You're putting your hand up.
I'm thinking, yeah, go ahead and oppress me.
Many other Palestinians I spoke with saw no apartheid whatsoever, and they were openly happy to live in the Jewish state.
עכשיו המצב, אני לא יכול להגיד משהו על מה שקורה, זה רק מי שיכול להגיד על זה, רק אנשים שהם בממשלה, או שלנו או של ישראלים, הם יכולים להחליט בדבר הזה. אנחנו סך הכל רוצים לחיות.
We know how to live in peace together. Me and Aaron.
Yes. See? Well, that's great. I mean, at least it seems like everything I've been hearing, yes, everything I'm hearing from so many of them is it's always the leadership. They're always saying, not me,
the leadership.
היה סבא שלי ועכשיו הוא מת לפני 3 שנים, 4 שנים, היה בן 105 שנים, היה עוזר להרבה אנשים, יהודים, ערבים, يعني מה שהוא צריך לעזור, כמה הוא צריך לעזור, הוא עוזר.
Can he quickly tell us why his grandfather wanted to help the Jews back in those days?
למה סבא שלך רצה לעזור ליהודים?
אצלנו בקוראן זה כתוב, אנחנו זה בני דודים. ככה רשום, ככה אבא שלי לימד אותי והסבא שלי לומד אותי. ולדוד שלי, זה דוד שלי, היהודים אנחנו לדודים.
Tell him thank you for his bravery.
בבקשה.
Thank you.
ביי.
Thank you.
ישראלי ערבי, פלסטיני, אתה חושב שההתנהגות שאתה מקבל, נגיד שאתה הולך בכביש, שאתה הולך לבית חולים, זה אחרת מיהודי?
אחלה. אני הייתי בתל השומר 1.5 שנה, הייתי כמו בן שלהם. התייחסו אליי אחלה.
אז אתה לא מרגיש הפרדה?
לא, מה פתאום? טיפלו בי אחלה. מ-0 עד מיליון. לא הרגשתי בכלל. 1.5 שנה, אפילו החולים שהיינו יושבים ביחד, מדברים ביחד.
יהודים וערבים?
10, ממש לא ראיתי שום... כל אחד יכול להגיע שהוא רוצה. למה? הנה המדינה נותנת לכולם ללמוד, לא? אז יאללה, תהיה עורך דין, תהיה מורה, אוסרים עליך, אפילו בתפילות. מפריעים לך? לא. אנחנו מתפללים 5 פעמים ביום, קוראים אללהו אכבר 5 פעמים ביום, אף אחד לא מפריע. לכן מי שרוצה להגיע, הוא יכול להגיע. ומי שלא רוצה, אז הוא מאשים את הממשלה, הוא מאשים את המדינה.
In a small Bedouin village just north of Nazareth, I had a rare chance to speak with a proud Arab Israeli, Mohammed Ka'abia. He's one of the few Muslims who have volunteered to serve in the Israeli army and has a proud heritage with his family fighting for Israel since its founding. He gave me a tour of his village, and I had the privilege to be taken to the village cemetery where Muslims who've served in the IDF are now buried.
Many people say that Muslims can't go to the military service in Israel because they are Jewish. It's a lie and lie and lie. We are proud Muslims and pro-Israeli citizens. We didn't have to go to the army, the Israeli army. We do it in the volunteer. We do it because we really feeling that we are apart from the Israeli state. Many of Muslims around the world and around the Arab world, they afraid to talk and afraid to say we support Israel. They said we want to move to Israel, we want to live in Israel, because Israel is the only democracy state in the Middle East. We have all rights. The Arabs have all rights in Israel, and we want to be in Israel.
So you are Israeli.
Yeah. I'm Muslims, Bedouins, Arabians, and Israeli, and proud of that.
That's wonderful, yes.
Many from the guys of this village go and joined in the army, Israeli army. There's a Muslim cemetery. There's military tombs for soldiers from my village that fallen in the first Lebanon war. And you can see military samples and in a Muslim cemetery.
Yes.
And the Bedouin community lost 181 soldiers that fallen in Israeli. And for me, this is the really connection to this state. My connection to this state, it's not a photo with the Israeli flag and not a post that supports Israel in the Facebook. My connection to this state is a blood connection.
We're now in our command center, which is works 24/7, around the clock. You see here in this room, he's now in charge of the dispatch center, and he's Muslim. He's Muslim. He lives in East Jerusalem, and he volunteers together with a Hasidic Jew. Came in from he's from Brooklyn originally. They work together on any situation, in every type of situation, in war, in times of peace. We treat about 750 people every day here.
And there's 2 refugee statuses in the UN. I should mention that. One is for every refugee in the world, and the other one is just for Palestinians. Matter of fact, they've been refugees 5 times longer than any other refugee in history. Billions of dollars are given to them for humanitarian aid. They haven't built a hospital with it. Something's wrong.
Now, the exciting adventures of Faxman, a strange little visitor from another planet where they tell the truth. How bizarre. Faxman, with knowledge and abilities far beyond those of mortal dudes, fighting for truth, justice, and the American... Wait. Oh, I'm flying commercial from now on, man. Okay, I've got the pesky facts. In 48, when the new country of Israel was attacked by 5 Arab nations, many Arabs in the area left. They figured, hey, they'd go on a vacation while the Jews were being driven into the sea. But Israel won, despite the odds in Vegas. Now, at the same time, the nearby Arab countries expelled their Jewish populations. Israel took in the 850,000 or so Jewish refugees, but the Arab countries refused to take the 575,000 vacationing Palestinians. Now, 63 years later, this group of refugees has supposedly grown to over 6 million. And the BDSers, well, they want Israel to let all of them return. Can you say, bye-bye, Israel? Ugh.
Why are those refugees there? When you look at the huge landmass that they have and that is available to them and the wealth that comes from oil interests for decades and decades, there is all the money in the world that could have resettled those refugees long ago.
The time has come to recognize that these folks are no longer refugees. They are political pawns being used by the Palestinian leadership and by opponents of Israel to maintain a festering sore and to maintain opposition to the nation state of the Jewish people. The statute of limitations on refugee status has long expired.
They do seem like professional refugees sometimes. I mean, lots of places in the world have had refugees. It's a horrible... Look, America stole a lot of what used to be Mexico. So but Mexico doesn't set up shop in Tijuana and lob rockets into Los Angeles. I mean, Germany and Czechoslovakia and Poland after the war, thousands, millions of people went. Indonesia expelled the Chinese. Algerians expelled the French. It happens. It's awful. But people do move on at a certain point. How long do people get before they move on? It's a fait accompli. Israel is not going away.
Correct. The Jews are used as scapegoats. The Palestinians are used by their own people as scapegoats.
The horrible conditions in which they're kept by Arab governments. The whole structure of the way the Palestinian refugees have been treated by the United Nations and by the surrounding Arab states is basically nuts. There's nothing like it in international law.
It is despicable because they could easily be integrated, and the money that's being poured there is catastrophic.
Since 1948, Arab leaders have approached the Palestinian problem with an irresponsible manner. They've used the Palestinian people for selfish political purposes. This is ridiculous, and I could say, even criminal.
The Palestinians, who are arguably history's greatest losers, are being used cynically by the Arab world, who could care less about them, to morally beat Israel.
And UNRWA mushroomed from a small organization to an organization today of 30,000 staff members serving 5,200,000 refugees.
So you guys deal with Palestinians only?
That's our mandate.
You're not allowed to take a side, am I right? I mean, that's why. I just wanted to get your perspective from that. There's a tradition the Palestinians have here of hanging a key, I guess, on their walls or... Okay, well, there you go. So, but one of the things that have been constantly spoken of and supposedly was found in their research was missiles and so forth actually put into like hospitals or into schools to sort of almost provoke a bombing into that area to wipe out things, almost to use as propaganda. Now that sounds horrific to me, but
I mean,
they said they found that, and as a UN, have you seen that to be true?
In the areas that, or in the example that some missile was found in a school that was evacuated by us, we can't control Gaza and we don't run Gaza. But
I was thinking you as a UN official, though, and I want to find the truth and let people decide, because ultimately we want peace. I do. Don't you?
Everybody does. If I knew that this interview was about this, I wouldn't have accepted it. I don't think that you did yourself justice in answering the questions. I think your questions were loaded.
No, wait a minute. Yes, they were. And Hamas is really smart. When they decide to rocket Israel, they insinuate themselves in the hospitals, in the schools, in the highly populous areas, and they are smart. So they try. So they wait. They try to put the Israelis in a position of either not defending themselves or killing innocents. They're good at it. They're smart. They've been doing this a long time.
You know, Gaza is a great example of UNRWA being actively involved. You know, that Israel is catching hell for hitting UNRWA sites, but then we know for a fact that UNRWA was storing weapons.
So obviously, parking
that
weapons.
question that I asked him that
he probably just like forget it. He didn't want to talk about that
pissed.
one. Yeah, of course, because you nailed them. Because we know there was a fact that they were storing weapons in their facilities.
I want to show you also a refugee camp.
Okay.
Now
I always think of that as tents, and they're out and they're
squalor,
nothing. There's nowhere to.
Sewage running through the streets.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but what we can see all around us is, you know, there are fields, there are houses, villages. We're right next to the town of Shechem, which is also called Nablus.
Mm-hmm.
And
the Palestinians sort of own this or have access to
this. This is Area A and Area B. Okay. This is theirs.
So they can do anything on this they want to. The Israelis can't stop them from building.
Correct. Correct. They can build what they want, where they. And you can see a lot of new factories, a lot of new apartment buildings. And the thing is, you've got all this empty space. Any normal government would have set up a whole lot of apartment blocks, cleared out that space, had the people move into the apartment blocks, cleared that space, built apartments there, and then had them go back into their nice new apartment. But instead they want to keep them in this squalor, in this high density living, to be able to take the press there and say, this is how the Palestinian refugees live.
But when a congressman, when a senator, when a diplomat comes in to observe and try to help because they feel bad for these people, if they're displaced, if they can't get out of their situation, you want to help them, you have humanity. But they're not stupid. How can they not look at this and not at least say, well, why are we not spreading this out? I mean, why can't they begin to expose that to actually help these people and for real? I mean,
the perspective is very different when you're down there seeing it, standing on the street. So you're not going to understand, wait a second, why are they kept in this area? Why can't they move there or there or there?
So had they cleared this out and began to make, wonderfully more convenient and just better opportunities for these people to live. The moment they would do that, then they would no longer have a story to tell. So you'd say it would be more about losing access to revenue than it would be trying to keep their story intact?
It's about keeping the story intact. It's losing their narrative. If the refugee camps didn't exist, and again, they have the keys on the walls, and they're promised they'll be going back to Jaffa, to Haifa, to Lod and Ramla.
Okay.
They're promised. So they stay there, they believe it, and they live in squalor based on that promise.
And you have political leaders using these types of situations. They'd rather their people live in poverty and have these stories that they can manipulate, because ultimately, what is their end goal? It's the demise of the Jewish state.
So the media tends to focus on refugee camps without mentioning that the only reason there are refugee camps is because the Palestinian leadership insists that they remain as festering sores to build up antagonism, to create terrorism.
I think that the UN is still lying on the Palestinians towards the issue of the right of return. The majority of the Palestinians in the diaspora don't believe that the right of return will be applicable one day.
Show me the money.
Over the last 21 years, the international community has, given over $31 billion to the Palestinian Authority as humanitarian aid. They've received more money in donations for humanitarian needs than any other people ever on the face of the earth.
Funny you should bring up those pesky facts, Brad. The mind-boggling amount given could have rebuilt Europe after World War II 20 times over. By now, every Palestinian should have a two-car garage and 2 cars. Well, it's reported that when Arafat died, he had over $2.4 billion in a Swiss bank account. And now it's estimated that Abbas is worth almost $1 billion. And the head of Hamas is now worth over $2 billion. I guess crime does pay. Plus, a recent report found that the Palestinian Authority is paying terrorists in Israeli jails some $5 million a month. Yes, each is making 3 figures and getting full dental. And I always thought suicide bombing was a dying business. Sadly, though, not a dime of that dough has gone into building a hospital or a school, but they do have some lovely tunnels in Gaza.
Where's the money, Lebowski?
We have all this hundreds of millions of dollars embezzled funds. Palestinian government, a lot of them have become multi-billionaires overnight.
What?
Hey, I'd love that
I've
too.
gotta get in.
I'd love that too. You know, I wouldn't mind that. But there's no actual repercussions. Who's taking them, who's suing, who's taking them to legal court? No one, because they are in control.
What they're doing, they're taking all the money and trying to fight Israel with it. Well, Israel cannot trust them, and because they know whatever agreement they will do, they don't have to keep it, because that's what the religion allows you to lie to get to what you want.
We come in peace.
Maybe we should try it. Two-state solution. Maybe that's what it takes. Maybe if we just let everybody have half and half, we'll all get along. Jewish people are smart. They said, well, we'll try it. But we're going to give a test run first. Let's start off with Gaza.
The dude minds. This will not stand, you know? This aggression will not stand, man.
And by the way, just for those of you who might think that this might have been a good idea, some people think that. They believe in a two-state solution. And they have a right to have their own opinions, right? They tried it once. Oslo Accords. That's right. They actually came to the leadership, Palestinian leadership, and said they will give them 99% of what they asked for. And they said no. Because hanging on to that 1% is greedy. Those Jews.
I mean, when I asked my mother for $5 allowances, she gave me $4.98, I'd be happy. Am I going to say, I don't want it?
Yeah.
You're not giving me $5, I'm not taking $4.98, take a hike.
Why do you think he would turn down such a...
Because he didn't want peace.
So you think about if you grew up looking over the hill and your dad saying to you, we hate them, we hate them. What do you mean make peace with them when you're 30 years old? Yeah. I grew up hating them. I don't know why I hate you, but I do, and I want you dead.
Now, it's been said that Arabs don't hate Jews because of Israel. They hate Israel because of Jews. I mean, where else does a mother celebrate the death of her child to kill Jews?
Somebody said to me today, you know, I think the Israelis' main problem is not Hamas. I think it's world opinion. Mm-hmm. And I said, you know, I think if you live there, you know, your main problem is I might get bombed when I go to the dry cleaners. I think that's a little more important than do people like me.
The fact is that the Muslim Middle East is a cauldron of Jew hatred. If you look at the Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank, their heroes are Nazis. Their heroes are people who kill people because they're Jews, not because of anything they did, just because they're Jews. Their children are taught to hate Jews and want to kill them.
For every peaceful Palestinian that just wants to be left in peace, and they're out there, there's some potential terrorist that wants to leave them in pieces.
تستشهد وبطعم لا جد تطعم كل حاجة تدعس ايش ما تتوقع أول جندي بدك تقتله كيف؟ اسناني بدي أعضه رقبتي بسناني بذبح تذبح بقتل على المطرح كم مستوطن أقل شيء مش حيوفيه معايا أقل شيء 100 لو صح لي أمسك جندي أفرمه بعدين لو صح لي أمشي الثاني راح أقطمه إيش أقول لك بدي أمزع رقبته والثالث بالسكينة هذه كل المستوطنين كل الأنجاس كل الأنذال في نص قلبه في نص قلب أي مستوطن
Right turn, Clyde.
And then we asked this question, and you know what? Maybe it's unanswerable. Is peace possible there? Is a two-state solution even feasible?
The two-state solution is not only feasible, it's necessary and inevitable. The problem, Palestinians won't sit down and negotiate. The Israelis have offered to negotiate with no preconditions. Why won't the Palestinians sit down and negotiate? Because of the BDS movement. Because they think they're winning on university campuses. They think they're winning in the court of public opinion. They think they're winning in Europe, and they fool themselves into thinking they'll get a Palestinian state without having to make the difficult compromises that statehood will require them to make.
maybe Israel should have never, the day after the Six-Day War in '67, said, okay, Jordan, here, have the West Bank back. You tried to annihilate us, but hey, all's forgiven.
For a president to be sitting in Washington, D.C. and saying, go back to your 67 borders in Israel, how about you live there and try to defend an indefensible border 9 miles wide?
So taking a look at human rights now, right, and we understand that there are many issues facing the Palestinians with that. Let's take a look at just the government. Who would govern? We look at Gaza, there's Hamas, but Hamas is a recognized terrorist organization.
And that's bad.
Well, I mean, if people don't want to be blown up in the streets, I guess so.
So the answer to those that say, can we have an independent state next to us in the immediate future, impossible with these people. Not until they have a dramatic change in their leadership, which is not on the horizon.
And, you know, the Israelis have done their part there by talking about a peace process. How can you have a peace process with people who want to exterminate you? You can't.
So in Israel, do they believe a two-state solution would work?
Truthfully, you know, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of politics in too much depth.
Then why are we interviewing you?
I don't know.
It's not an Israel-Palestinian conflict. It's a conflict the Arab world has with the Jewish people and the Jewish state. And it's never been about the creation of a Palestinian state, which again, fact, I can show you multiple examples. Israel has offered it, the Arab world has rejected it in '48, in '67, in 2008. Every single offer made, they reject.
I believe that a far more dangerous weapon and a far more immediate weapon is the about to be birthed, if the world has its way, state of Palestine on the high ground, controlling Israel's water aquifers, looking down on the coastal plain on Tel Aviv and on Ben Gurion International Airport, with open access to the kind of missile technology that we now have in southern Lebanon, nearly 100,000 missiles facing us from the Hezbollah and from the Gaza Strip, their missile arsenal as well, would see Israel surrounded by missiles and unable to protect herself. No strategic depth, no way to exist, no way to survive. The obliteration of Israel in a very short time.
People who speak of two states right now, not as a desire, goal later, are playing with words. They're not living in the real world. In the real world, they would be taken over by ISIS. Incidentally, ironically, in a two-state solution, vast numbers of Palestinians will die at the hands of ISIS.
The Palestinian leaders have stated that all the Jewish people in Judea and Samaria will be ordered to leave their homes and land or simply be killed. With all Jews expelled from the area, guess what? One of the leading universities in cancer research would be gone. I spoke with Arab students, grad students, and professors at Ariel University.
What is unique about this university is that Muslims, Christians, and Jewish students all go here together. Am I missing, is there other religious affiliate unicorns are here? I don't know. I just thought, who knows? Obviously it's a magical university.
When you come to settlement, like Muslim people, Palestinian people, there's a conflict. And then I came here, I see other people, Jewish people, we live together, eat together, play together, learn together. And many ideas and many things will be changed.
So, since she came here, she's tried to coexist with the Jewish people, and she finds that it's possible.
And I think it's one of the beautiful things about the university here in Ariel that I mean, we are to for academic purposes to advance research that I think I can benefit in all of humanity.
Exactly. Let's say this two-state solution came to a reality. You just told us that what's happening here right now is probably down the road will save millions of lives. Suddenly, two states. What happens to this university?
We can lose a lot of students here because there are many students from the settlements, from the places around Ariel that will not come to study in this university, and they are very smart, they are very skilled, very good students. And I will tell something else. I think we have an inspiration from the specific place that Ariel is situated.
Every time people tried to come in to destroy them, they couldn't be done, almost like it was providential. So there's a new idea now. I know how we can destroy them. We'll call it BDS. If you don't know what BDS stands for, remove the D. Okay. What?
I get it. You guys don't like our country.
But BDS is this idea, this thought, this concept that we're going to boycott, divest, and sanction. What it means is this: boycott. We will not buy any goods from Israel. Divest. We will not invest in their technology or their thoughts. And sanction. They must be punished for having the audacity to be in the Middle East and be a democracy. That has got to stop. How audacious of those folks. And if you want to play the boycott, divest, and sanction game, it's quite easy. I'll let you play right here now. If you really want to play this game, it's really easy. Just go ahead and reach in your pocket and get your cell phone, throw it into a manila envelope, then find your laptop, stick that in there too. And every other technological advice that's at the cutting edge of technology, just shove it into a manila envelope and send it to me. God's Comic, Brad Stine, care of BDS Comedy Central, because I'll take that stuff and I'll use it. What I'm getting at is this: if you really want to punish Israel and show what a great humanitarian you are, you got to go back to the Stone Age.
But hey, dude, boycotts against Jews is not news. In the 1930s, a wacko guy with a funny little mustache began a full boycott against all the Jews in his country. One night in 1938, the boycott exploded into a full-blown pogrom, as over 1,000 synagogues were burned and over 7,000 Jewish businesses were destroyed or damaged. While on vacation in Germany, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem met with Hitler and took some lessons in Jew hating. So in 1945, just after the war, the Arab League issued its first formal boycott of Jewish businesses in the Middle East. This boycott had various levels of success until like the late 1990s. Now the latest boycott was launched in 2005 by over 170 Palestinian NGO organizations. The BDS movement.
That's totally bullshit. That means that the BDS became another new organization who want to gain also money and power on the suffer of the Palestinians. We are people who want to survive. We are people who are looking for a better level of life. We are people that we want to ensure the future of our children. If you will come today to any ordinary Palestinian and asking him what are the most three priorities that you are seeking, he will say a job to survive. He will say to secure the education system and the health system for my children. So where is the boycott? People are not care.
What we're talking about here is the BDS movement. What does that stand for? Bigoted double standard.
Hitler didn't start killing Jews when he became chancellor. He first poisoned the mind of Europeans against the Jewish people, so that by the time he had his death machine in place, nobody was going to protest. In fact, they would even help. And for a quarter of a century at least, since the Oslo Agreement was signed, the international media has been demonizing Israel in an effort to turn the whole world against Israel, and they are succeeding. So hand in hand with the media and the economic boycott of the BDS movement and all these, they're all following the same pattern. They're all heading in the same direction.
It's the only country in the world where disagreement over policy results in a call for economic capital punishment. So criticize Israel if you are critical of its policies, but don't overstate it, and don't call for sanctions to be directed only against the nation state of the Jewish people. There is a name for that, and it's called bigotry.
Where's the BDS against Iraq? Are you serious? Where's the BDS against China? Where's BDS against North Korea, always leading the world in human rights violations? While there is genocide against Christians in the Middle East, where is the BDS against Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq? Where is it? Boycott them. Then again, I guess, what good is boycotting a country that's never invented anything?
Johnny, what can you make out of this? This? Well, I can make a cap, or a brooch, a pterodactyl.
I am a liberal Democrat. I support Israel because I'm a liberal. The BDS movement is not a liberal or progressive movement. BDS violates all the progressive and liberal values that we stand for. BDS is collective punishment. So the BDS movement is immoral and illiberal.
Our time. Watch my
Tim Ripper Owens here. Israel, Israel, Israel. No boycott stopping me. I will be there December 17th, Titans of Metal. You know, the BDS boycott, I'm ashamed that people would try to stop musicians and try to stop fans and try to stop people. You know, this thing is, it's not about politics or territory. You know, it's about Arabs hating Jews. Israel, I'm for the music, I'm for the people, and music is for the people. I will see you.
Unfortunately, by taking the negotiations away with the BDS movement, which is what they want to do, they want to have Israel up against a wall. By taking the negotiations away, you are allowing a state to prosper under undemocratic values and possible terror regimes, which is what is being created a lot today.
The head of the BDS movement has said that he does not support the two-state solution. He supports a one-state solution, and that one state would be a Muslim state, Palestine, which would become a haven for ISIS and other terrorist groups. So let nobody confuse the BDS movement with simply an anti-occupation or anti-settlement movement. Its goal is to destroy the nation state of the Jewish people.
Everyone who really cares and putting all this energy in the BDS movement, why don't we all put our minds together and try to help the Palestinian people with proper education, with taking out all the terror areas that are in there, and with making sure it's a democracy and that there are elections and the government is elected by the people.
Do you think you can go in there and do that single-handedly?
I only hope.
We have to learn to speak in the language of those that are coming from BDS. And that language is Israel is not legitimate. So the way to discuss it and to debate it is by saying Jews are from Israel. In fact, the reason why we're called Jews is because we come from a country that was then called Judea. Hence, coming from Judea, we became known as Jews. So who is really indigenous here?
The emperor is devoted to his empire. He's particularly fond of Judea.
And Judea is not fond of the emperor.
Oh.
Israel bashing is the final form that anti-Semitism is taking in human history. We used to be accused of other things like kidnapping Christian babies, using their blood to bake matzah, controlling the world's economy, and poisoning wells. Now it's Israel bashing. But overwhelmingly, the same people who are claiming they have nothing against Israel, I think, harbor very strong attitudes that would be classified as anti-Semitic. And it's a smokescreen again.
Why don't you just come out and be honest? You hate Jews. Because it's not believable when you say, God, it's not believable when you say, hey, let's boycott and sanction against Israel, right? At the same time, we're going to let Iran have the bomb. Okay, whoa, wait a second. What? Let's sanction Israel, right? Because Israel is clearly the problem, right? State-sponsored terrorism everywhere. What do they do with their gays in Israel? They have a gay pride parade. You can't say any longer that this is a legitimate boycott of Israel when you're lifting your sanctions against Iran. I mean, it's just a joke.
Why do they want to boycott Israel? Why do they want to choke Israel to death?
They cheated.
Because they're so successful, they must be the biggest cheaters who ever lived.
We're building world-leading innovation. We're not this murderous, like, genocidal. That's not, you got to realize this is the same country. People don't realize that. So, as far as BDS is concerned, why does it exist? Again, Israel is, I'm not going to say Israel. Israel only exists 67 years. The Jews always have to face, unjust hatred and anti-Semitism forever.
You know who's responsible for that, don't you? The Jews.
You know what's funny about the BDS movement?
If you can find the funny, you are a good man.
A lot of the recent cancer cures are coming out of Israel.
Really?
Got to boycott them.
Okay.
And a lot of other healthcare things, like they're very advanced in robotics and things, getting people who are paralyzed to walk and things. So you got to boycott that.
Okay.
Stuff. So
we got to keep people paralyzed with cancer.
Yeah, cancer.
And then you
throw away your cell phone.
Okay.
And you'll be fine with boycotting Israel.
Okay.
Some say the world should boycott Israel. If you're one of them, you should know this would be a mission impossible in the West. That's because Israeli technology is everywhere. Your laptop most probably runs on a processor developed in Intel, Israel. Do you use the internet next time you visit Facebook and Google or use Microsoft products? Remember, they all use network components developed by Mellanox. From Israel, do you transfer data on memory sticks? That technology was invented in Israel. those family and friend photos you snap with your mobile camera? The camera was developed in Israel. And last but not least, next year, Israel Aerospace Industries from Israel and Facebook will launch a satellite that will provide internet connection in remote areas where even water is not available.
Because of the BDS movement, what losses do you think would be incurred if Israel was not allowed to continue to have its funding placed into it so it can move forward?
My guess is there's a lot of Jewish scientists around the world who will then stop cooperating. You know, not just from Israel, will then stop cooperating with other scientists.
Solidarity, or
Yep, and it's a matter of the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
First of all, we develop here that can be useful for everybody.
Yeah.
Regardless to religion, okay, Muslims, Christians, Jews, doesn't matter. Acts not only against me, against the whole of humanity. It doesn't make sense to stop, to boycott, to harm something that relates to science. And this is the pure science. We are trying to heal people, not to kill people. So why should we boycott it?
Sadly, the very people that the BDS is supposed to help are being hurt, and in the end, it's going to make it harder for them to support their own families. In 2015, due to BDS pressure, SodaStream closed its factory and nearly 500 of the company's Palestinian workers lost their jobs. I talk with Palestinians about how BDS and the possible two-state solution will affect them.
And they opened this area for this reason, to build a place for Palestinians and Israelis to work together. 20% are Israelis, all the rest are Palestinians. Without us, they probably will be without work and nothing. So this is the funny things about all this story. They need us. We need them too. Our plant manager is working here in this factory for 26 years. He always said that the living here and the working here, it was like something that does not belong to this all Israeli area, okay? Because here it's something else. You see the people around here who works in the factory, they smile, they have job. We smile, we have jobs. We have no guns, okay, around us, nothing. We believe in our smiles.
הכל בסדר.
טוב לך פה?
כן.
איך לעבוד עם הישראלים?
בסדר גמור.
בסדר גמור?
בסדר גמור.
כן?
כן.
Okay. She said that she feels here like at home. This is the place that she works. She worked here 16 years, okay? And she don't have any feelings of apartheid. She says it's like a family here for her.
טובים, טובים ביחד. אנחנו רוצים שלום, טובים, אנחנו נעשה בשלום, אנחנו עובדים ביחד, ועובדים ביחד, חוזרים לבית, בלי בלגן, בלי משהו, הכל בסדר.
מה יקרה אם מחר הרשות הפלסטינית תקבל את האזור הזה ויסגרו פה את המפעל?
מות, אין עבודה. אין כסף.
תסתכלי עליה.
אין כסף.
She said that I asked her if this area will over to the Palestinian and this factory will be closed, what will happen with her and her friends? She said she will die. No work, no money, nothing. שפגעו בך, שקשה, את לא מצליחה להגיע לעבודה בגלל זה, תסתכלי רק אליה.
לא.
שום דבר?
לא.
Okay, she said that no, and against no. It's very easy to her to come to work. She came from Jericho, right?
Jericho.
She came from Jericho, that it's like 20 kilometers from here. And every morning she came to work. And it's like me, that I came to work, she came to work. They do it nicely, with a lot of honor to the people. And then they get inside the factories.
We are a plastic company. I have here 90 people working with me. 50 of them Palestinian, 40 of them Israelis. This is not so important to the Israeli economy. This is more important to the Palestinian economy. I think, we are the number one engine, economic engine, for the Palestinian economy. We should look for other things, not boycott. All the people who are working here, Palestinian and Israeli. And every year we are going for vacation, every year we're going for a day off. And this is a hope. This is a hope for us, for the Middle East, and for the world.
אני מנהל מחלקת הרכבה, עובד עם ישראלים 30 שנה אני עכשיו. התחלתי ב-18, עכשיו אני 30. לא, אני לא מרגיש. אני המנכ"ל שלי, אני מדבר אותו חופשי, לפעמים אנחנו מתווכחים על משהו, לפעמים הוא אומר לי כן, אומר לי לא, אני אותו דבר, אין הבדל בין הישראלים
Israel has extended the life of Palestinians on the West Bank. They have a much higher life expectancy than Arabs in other parts of the world. They have much more freedom of expression, freedom to criticize than Arabs and Muslims in other parts of the world. And the objective evidence demonstrates that many benefits have accrued to the Palestinians, including political nationalism. Remember, the Palestinians never regarded themselves as a people in 1938. They went to the Peel Commission and said, we're not a people, we're part of southern Syria.
All right.
Intifada! 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 Long live the Intifada! Long live the Intifada!
It's on campuses now. You can apparently get a letter now in anti-Semitism. Because you see it on campuses. They actually have an apartheid week. What happened to the good old days when you went to college so you could study and drink?
Too much, in my opinion, is moving into the anti-Jewish field, in which students on campuses are being threatened, not because they're pro-Israel or pro-Zionist, but because they're Jewish. And I think this is one of the major dangers of the BDS.
You know, people think the Jews are not tough. I happen to be a very tough Jew. I fear nobody. The only tough Jews are in Israel. In Israel, the Jews are tough.
Oh, yes.
I saw them. I thought they were Puerto Ricans.
The ultimate Jew, Jackie Mason.
The kids in the college campuses, all they know is they have a great life, and they heard the Palestinians are suffering. They don't even look to it to find out why the Palestinians are suffering, or even if they are suffering. Right. The truth is they're not suffering, but they need a cause. You love to have a cause to prove to yourself that you're a great humanitarian. Okay. So they invented a cause that doesn't exist.
Students who are supportive of Israel have a legal right to safety and security of their physical being. Violent demonstrations are not protected by the Constitution. Incitements to violence are not protected by the Constitution.
Palestinian students on campuses across the country have built together a network of other oppressed peoples, self-defined. Those people then have taken on, like I said, the narrative of Israel being the great oppressor in the world. And it's actually having an impact, a scary impact on college campuses.
You know, being against Israel, has become the cool thing to do.
I go to Kent State University. There's a professor there that calls his students his little jihadists. He's on a terrorist watch list, actually.
They were screaming Intifada, Intifada, and by the end of it, there were 3 Israeli flags that were just stomped on.
Anti-Semitism has definitely affected my college career, whether it be the swastikas that were drawn on our mailbox or our anti-Semitic president of the student body.
There are people running for political office that are running on campaigns of, with Jews you lose.
There was about 800 of them on one side, and there was about 6 of us on the other side. And 50 of them crossed over the road and actually, got on their faces, started yelling, kill the Jews, Hitler was right, and started saying, baby killer and stuff. And then we just started kind of getting attacked. I had a concussion. My sister was punched in the face, grabbed by the hair and pulled to the ground. My mom was punched in the stomach and pushed to the ground. The group that actually hosted that rally is actually a group on our campus.
So are you nervous on campus now?
Yeah, walking around campus, I'm not gonna lie, I do fear for my life.
This year I've come back. Some of my Orthodox friends, he won't wear a kippah anymore. He always wore a kippah. The first thing he said is why do you not have your kippah on? He goes, I'm afraid to walk around with that on.
At UMBC, it's a lot of hate rhetoric going on about free Palestine. Go back to Israel, you effing Jews.
We're threatened as Jews on campus. We are, first of all, not even recognized on campus because we're a Jewish fraternity.
It's every day. It's not a big deal. It doesn't show up in the newspapers because it's to be expected.
I felt like our campus was poisoned by both anti-Semitism, but also just a sort of dark level of hatred. One of my best friends was walking to class and she was spit on by another student simply because he saw that she was wearing a Jewish star around her neck. Anti-Semitism, hatred of the Jewish people of Israel is real.
I think it was blessed are the cheesemakers.
Historically, Christians have played a vital role in supporting Israel. And if they turn away, well, what will be the fate of this tiny nation? Most of the mainstream denominations dumped on Israel and the Jewish people years ago. The growth of replacement theology tells many Christians that the Jews have no right to Israel and no promise from God.
For centuries, churches have taught their people that the Jews killed Christ, that the Jews lost their place in God's purposes, that they are no longer the chosen people, and that we have replaced them. So when they look at Israel today, they don't see God's people.
Palestinians say Jesus was not a Jew. They say he was a Palestinian. The way the Nazis said that Jesus was not a Jew, he was an Aryan. That's what Jew haters do. The Protestants who say only Scripture, don't read in, it's clear what the words say. Yeah. And then they say, oh, Israel doesn't mean Israel. Israel meant Israel till Jesus came and then stopped meaning Israel.
Right.
Wow, that's mind-blowing.
Donations to the Reverend Moon. Jews for Jesus.
And I always say it's sort of a test of your moral barometer, what you think about the Jewish people and what you think about the Jewish state.
The Bible warns in that time there will come a great deception, so much so that the very elect, that's the word for God's people who believe Jesus is the Savior, that many of them will be deceived. That's happening right now in the face of the church that has become blinded in much of its existence. We are coming to a time that it will make no difference what I say here today or what you film and people will hear, because the deceit, the deception will dominate the world.
The scary thing is to see so many evangelicals now joining in on the hatred. From Christ at the checkpoint to Mark Green, more and more are turning their backs on Israel.
Perhaps the last 5 years or 6 years or so, a new gathering of evangelicals, known as Christ at the Checkpoint, has been targeting especially younger generation Christians with a falsehood, with the deceptive teaching that supporting Israel today is anti-God, that God no longer has a national purpose for this nation, and that those who stand with Israel are actually standing against and are anti the Arab people.
It says in Psalms, those who love God must hate evil. If you don't hate evil, you don't love God. That's what, and that is correct. So if you're not fighting for Christians in the Middle East, and you're not fighting for Israel, I don't know how much you love God. I know how much you love yourself.
You know, one myth out there is that the Christian population in Jesus' hometown of Bethlehem has dropped due to the supposed Israeli occupation. But what do the facts say? For centuries, the Christian population was constant. Well, until the 1993 Oslo Accords, the population of 80% Christians quickly dropped to 20% and has continued to decline under Palestinian Authority. Looking down the road, about 69 miles away, is Nazareth, another city with a historically large Christian population. Now it's under Israeli control. In fact, since 1948, the only place in the Middle East where the Christian population has grown is Israel, from 34,000 to about 150,000 today. That's a 345% increase. The facts strike again. And trust me, when it comes to interviewing Arab Christians, they're petrified of saying what they really think. Get them on the side with their face blanked out, with their voice hidden, and they'll tell you what's going on in Bethlehem. They'll tell you the hell they're living through, how they're being terrorized, they're losing everything.
For the ones in Bethlehem, the Christians are leaving because they get pressured twice. They get persecuted by the Muslims who see them going to church, and they persecute them and all that. And it's getting worse and worse. That's why they're all fleeing.
The war in the Middle East, it's not about land. It's a Muslim holy war. The Jews have to be driven into the sea because they're not Muslims. And the Christians, too. Christian communities in the Middle East are dying, or they're being killed, is more accurate.
As Pope Francis has said, you can't be a Christian and be an anti-Semite. The Old Covenant was never revoked, And Nostra Aetate very explicitly rejected this idea of the collectivization of guilt, that somehow Jews were all responsible for the killing of Christ then, and then fast forward into 2017. You'd have to be really a marginalized Catholic to entertain that kind of insanity.
At the end of the day, it's a human nature, and only till the Prince of Peace comes, we'll never have real peace.
In 48 hours of last week's quake, 2 747s arrived in Port-au-Prince from Israel, one loaded with medical supplies and the other with personnel.
Am I perfect? No. Do I know everything? But I didn't just listen to one side or the other. I went and talked to them. I went to visit their places. I went to watch the technology that these people are putting together. That's unbelievable. Cutting edge, drip irrigation, where they literally have created irrigation that does not waste all the water, drips right into the plants one drop at a time, and creates a harvest bigger than anybody has ever had. And only Jews would have thought about how to squeeze water.
A group of pioneers takes the first step toward changing the world. Soon, Netafim is established at Kibbutz Hatzerim, and the world's first commercial dripper is installed.
Our purpose is helping the world grow more with less. We feel that we are privileged that we can help the world. If you ask any Israeli, what is your highest dream, your highest goal? What do you like to see? They will tell you, we are seeking peace. This is part of our culture, is seeking peace. And this is everybody. And making good for this world.
Jews have, I think, 155 Nobel Prizes, and Muslims have 2. I'm not, now maybe it's who you know, but that seems like kind of a big advantage for Team Hebrew.
This looks like a job for Superman.
They were the ones that invented Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, all the superheroes that everybody emulates around the world.
All right, hey, you ever tried shawarma? I don't know what it is, but I want to try it.
And how about Hollywood movies? You ever heard of Warner Brothers? Jewish guys. You know what? These guys actually are doing pretty darn good. Maybe they do control the world.
Their minimum objective must be the entire world.
You know what I found out is despite how much they're hated, Israel and the Jewish people continue to make the world a better place to live. Israel does great work in so many areas.
What's going on in Israel on the tech scene is unparalleled, unprecedented in the world. It's unbelievable to see a country the size of New Jersey that has, you know, hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of startups that are truly changing the world. Many of the technologies that we're all using, you know, we carry around in our pockets or on our computers are built here in Israel. I can't think of any big, large, you know, tech corporation that doesn't have presence here. From, you know, Google, Microsoft, Apple, AOL, Yahoo, they're all here. From Ashton Kutcher, the actor, is also an investor.
My research is about brain tumors in children.
Oh, and it's called bioinformatics?
Informatics.
Okay.
Yeah. Our goal was to help those children when they, after they get the treatment, they have a high chance to get recurrence. The tumor that I work with, called medulloblastoma, it's a very, it's very deadliest. And those who survived have high recurrence, as I said.
We, in this lab, are working 5 PhD students developing a targeted delivery for cancer research. We developed targeted therapeutics that can be administered to enormous numbers of different cancers.
Just
of
for
course,
cancer,
AIDS can be useful for AIDS, for Parkinson. It can be helpful for pathing the BBB, for brain tumors.
I challenged Stephen Hawking, who supports the BDS movement, to debate me. He can't accept the debate because the machine that he uses to talk with was manufactured in Israel. So he can't have a debate about BDS, supporting BDS, while using techniques that were developed in Israel. If people really want to support the BDS movement, they have to give up many of the pharmaceuticals that save lives. I take every day pharmaceuticals that are manufactured and developed in Israel. So the BDS movement is hypocritical. Nobody is going to boycott Israeli products that help them and make their lives better.
See, Jews in space!
It will be the smallest spacecraft that took the smallest time frame to build with the lowest budget, and will show that with limited resources you can land on the moon. And hopefully, you know, if you look at humanity, we can show that in the same amount of resources you can land not just one spacecraft, but you can land 10 or 20. And this will be something that could advance humanity in a huge way. We're basing it on a lot of Israelis' technology. Yes. So that's part of the equation. Really the educational impact, hopefully inspiring kids to be engineers, and maybe we'll even spark you know, the imagination of kids around the world to do that.
Israel exports clean water technology. Israel, for instance, is the #1 recycler of water in the world. Like this tiny nation of 8 million people.
They're green.
I would stick my neck out to say that Israel is one of the greenest nations in the world.
Well, this is really Jerusalem sewage. And this is the Sorek River. It's been around since biblical times, since Samson. But this is really sewage from the city of Jerusalem, which has been recycled and treated for irrigation. And Israel, matter of fact, is leading the globe, leading the whole world in recycled use of treated sewage water. What we're talking about, this whole conversation, is what is known in the world, in the climate change studies, as the water energy nexus. UN is talking about it, the World Bank is talking about it. This is exactly part of the solution to global warming.
I think there's no doubt that Israel exists today because there are skills, there are values and there are ideals in Israel that should be shared with the world because of what they bring. That's part of this world and that wants to be part of this world. We have a certain duty to really show and share what we know how to do. And right now we're working in 17 countries at all times.
I think what drives us as Israelis and makes us successful as humanitarian aid workers is that we're innovative, we care about people, and we have the skills to provide the assistance. And this is something that's very unique. The Jewish value of tikkun olam and about giving to the other, it's something that's already rooted into our history. It's something that is part of us.
But at the end of the day, I feel like the best message we can spread is love, innovation, technology, making the world a better place is the same country. So you think that I'm sitting here, 20 hours a day building, medical devices that like a Jerusalem company is a medical device that's detecting cervical cancer using your iPhone. So that same guy is then going and killing Palestine. Come on.
Man. This is a fulfillment of prophecy. And even if you aren't religious, this is a political miracle. Who would have thought that a people would have climbed out of Holocaust camps, literally, with literally the rags on their back, and then they would move to the middle of the desert in the middle of the Middle East with zero natural resources, and today you're looking at one of the great developed countries in the world. If you're not realizing the miracle of this story, you're missing out on one of the great epic sagas of humanity.
What could it be about this small sliver of land? Because that's what people say. Maybe that's what they do. They invade other countries and take over. Never. They are 0.001% of the entire landmass of the world. They are the size of New Jersey without the attitude.
First off, I see muscles, so I'm like, okay, like, this guy's my type.
You want to hear the answer or no? Do you want to hear the answer or don't you?
They are the most historically documented persecuted people group on the face of the earth. And they finally said, we're just going to find a place that God gave us a few thousand years ago, predating anybody else, and live here so we can be safe for once and for all. I am saying there's nothing wrong with that. That's just common sense. It is time, America and free-minded people, to quit hating Israel, to love Israel, to accept Israel. Enough is enough. If you hate Jews, you hate Israel. This is a humanitarian problem that has to stop. Israel deserves to stand, and we will defend them to the death. God bless you, folks. Good night.
So once again, I just have to ask myself, as should you, after all these facts have been compiled, why should we care about Israel? I mean, will its survival affect me? And with all they do and provide for the world, is hitting Israel with BDS really a good idea? In time, it will affect Israel, and ultimately, you, and me, and oh yeah, the whole world.
And boycott Israel if you think that's just, but unless you have a double standard, you must also boycott the rest of the nations where allegations of human rights violations. We're not perfect, but if you think we're the worst, first take a look at the rest of the earth. Don't pick and choose to pick on the Jews. Pick up the paper and read the news. Boycott Chile because they deny abortions, even if the mother would die. And boycott Brazil where the brutal police kill thousands of people to keep the peace. Boycott Venezuela.
BDS is part of what I call the fake left. The arrogant and ignorant who see themselves as righteous are just blowhards, liars.
The joy that I have known of being welcomed among my brothers and sisters in a Jewish land. And I will always come back to this blessed and heroic place, which for me will always be home. So I thank you very much for this honor.
We're not perfect, but if you think we're the worst, first take a look at the rest of the earth. Don't pick and choose to pick on the Jews. Pick up the paper and read the news.